So I don't actually have to go and find money.
No.
The deposit's already built into
Yeah.
my existing mortgage. Is
Yes.
that right? So when
Yeah.
you go to the bank and you say, I'm buying an investment property, this is the loan, they will take into account the equity in your current home.
Yes, I've been doing that for 20 years.
So you outlay
not
$0.
not a cent of your own money to get to become a property investor.
Hi, I'm Julie-Anne Sprague, Wealth Editor for The Australian. Welcome to our Masterclass series. In today's episode, we're going to unpack everything you need to know about the property market. How do you get in and how do you invest? Joining me is Anthony Keane from our wealth team, and he's also a property investor, so he knows a thing or two about this. Let's unpack it for you. Anthony, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, you are a property investor. You know a thing or two about it.
Yes.
I own zilch. Well, no, I own my own home, but I do not have investment properties. So let's unpack how to get into property investing.
Well, step one, owning your own home is great, but a lot of people don't have that there. We have got lots of issues of young people not being able to get into the property market. We are actually seeing a lot of people become investors before they become homeowners, simply because they would want to live somewhere but not necessarily where they can afford to buy. So we are seeing a lot of that.
So let's start at the beginning. So you want to get into the property market. What's step one?
Step one is to do something. You can't just spend 10 years thinking, I wish I got into the property market. Doing something can just mean start saving a small amount of money every week towards a deposit. It can be reading articles about property investment, reading books, speaking to other people who are involved in it, finding out what they did and how they do it. But if you don't do anything, if you just spend your entire 20s and maybe 30s
complaining about it?
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Is it fair though to look at property prices, seeing how far they've run and think, it's unattainable, like I've got no chance, so I'll go and do something else? Is that fair?
Yes.
And do you see that?
It is fair. It is fair for a lot of people because the median prices across Australia have just skyrocketed in recent years and decades. But doing something can mean starting a share portfolio. If you've got a 10-year plan to buy property, you could start buying shares now. They're a long-term investment, but they're going to grow a lot more than cash in the bank. So it could be using savings, it could be using shares. There are apps that can help people invest and save decent amounts of money over time.
How much money are we talking? Like how much money does someone have to save to get into the property market?
Oh, well, the median prices there, and often you hear median house price in Sydney might be a million or it's 800,000 in a lot of other cities. I mean, that's a huge amount. So it is really tricky and really tough to build it. But as I said, you start doing something, you'll get there eventually. It might take a while. You may have to team up with family members or friends to get that foot in the door. Once that foot's in the door, you're on your way.
All right, let's assume your foot's in the door. You've got your family home. You've got massive mortgage bills, you might have kids, you have other commitments, it feels like there's just no extra cash lying around, but you want to build wealth for yourself. You've got friends, maybe they've got investment properties and you're thinking, how on earth do you do it? Anthony, you've got investment properties. And I'm like how?
Yeah.
So if I've got my own home, what's the strategy for me? What do I do?
If you have your own home, the number one key is to have equity in your home. That's the difference between the size of your loan and the value of your home. Fortunately, a lot of Australians over the last 5 or 10 years have seen the equity in their home go up a lot as house prices have climbed.
So just to strip it back, so when we're talking equity, so if I bought my house for $1 million, if you're at that level in that year you've bought it, you're probably not buying an investment property in that year because your house theoretically will be worth about the same money. But then as the prices start to grow, so if you're going to sell your house, so next year if it's gone up, 10, 20, if you're in Sydney, gone up a lot, then you've built up the equity.
Yes.
So you might have extra 200 or 300,000 in the value of your home. And how does that work? What does that mean in terms of your borrowing capacity?
That effectively gives you the deposit. It gives you all of the money. And you're absolutely right. You're not going to buy your own home and 1 or 2 years later you're going to become a property investor. But what can happen after 5 years, if you've had some good growth in the market, your home loan's gone down, your property value's gone up, and you build that equity. And if you have enough of equity in your own home to be a 20% deposit, so you avoid paying lender's mortgage insurance. You can buy an investment property using that equity and not
Hang on. So this is where it gets like, is it a magic pudding stuff? So I don't actually have to go and find money.
No.
The deposit's already built into my existing mortgage. Is
Yes.
that right? So when
Yeah.
you go to the bank and you say, I'm buying an investment property, this is the loan, they will take into account the equity in your current home.
Yes, I've been doing that for 20 years.
So you outlay
not
$0.
a cent of your own money to get to become a property investor.
Do you need to be careful about how you're structuring your loans? Can you do it so that there's a loan that's just contained to the investment property so that the two aren't linked? Or what's your view on?
Most property investors will go interest-only loan to keep the costs down. Most property investors, when they're starting at least, also get tax deductions, negative gearing for the cost. So things like interest that they will pay, agent fees, insurance, those sorts of things. So they're all tax deductible for an investor, but not for your own home.
Okay, now I reckon this question might come up for people who are looking at it. So I've got my own home, been very diligent, paid down the mortgage, it's not paid off, but there's equity built in. But I'm thinking maybe I want to buy a different house for me and my family. So I'll buy that house, move into that house, and the home I'm currently in can be the investment property. That makes sense to me as someone who's thinking I'm just going to choose a different home for me and then rent out the one I'm in. But does it make sense financially?
No, it's and so many people have said that to me over the years, and it sounds great. You get the emotional attachment to your old home, you keep your old property, but if you've paid a decent chunk off your own mortgage and then you turn that into an investment property, the tax deductible interest cost of that mortgage, the tax deduction is going to be a lot lower.
Because my mortgage is lower.
Because your mortgage is lower, and then you go and buy your own home with a full-size mortgage again, not tax deductible. So it's all about making the deductions work. The idea is all your debt should be deductible where possible.
Is this how people build up a portfolio of investment properties? So you jump into one and then you do the same thing. You build up equity in that property.
Yes.
And then use that component to get the next one? Or is it still built into your existing home loan? How does
there are different ways of structure. Obviously, if you're buying one property and using your mortgage, then your mortgage is used as security over that investment property. Early on in my sort of investment journey, we had some cross collateralization, they called it, but after a while, once they all start growing, you're not getting just the value in your own home going up, you're getting the value of an investment property one or investment property two. So they're all going up, and eventually they can be secured against themselves, just like a normal mortgage.
Now we've had a boom in property prices. They just boom.
Yes.
But I do like to cater to risk, and not everything goes up all the time. So what happens if property prices fall, and what do you need to be careful of or mindful of to make sure, I guess, you just don't blow up your wealth in the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Property prices fall, share markets fall. A lot of people use equity to invest in shares. They can have some nasty falls there. It's the same with property. If the price drops, you've just got to stick with it. You've got to make sure that you can handle. No, you do. You do not panic sell. Rule number one of investing: do not panic sell, whether it's shares or whether it's property. Stick with your plan. If the price goes down.
Sorry to jump in, but do you need some sort of a buffer when you're structuring these loans to factor in the fact that if prices go backwards, so that the bank doesn't move in on you and sell for you?
The bank is not going to revalue it. Once they've done it. So as long as you can afford to cover the mortgage, which a tenant is going to help you pay, as long as you can afford things like management and insurance and those sorts of things, that's the buffer that you need. You wouldn't become a property investor and have no capacity whatsoever to be unable to pay that, or if this tenant moves out, or you're trying to find a new tenant and the changeover, you've got to have that.
Just on that, I think people might be worried about that. So it sounds great, you've built up equity, you get your investment property, but to pay the mortgage on that investment property, you're relying on a tenant, like someone to pay the rent, to pay your bills. So what do you have to factor in as an investor? So what wriggle room are we talking about?
Insurance is certainly going to help. When you are an investor, you want to invest in property that is likely to rent out. So that's the other, and that's where that knowledge comes from. That's where that experience comes from, learning from others. A lot of people invest regionally, but if you're doing that, just make sure, because prices are lower, but if you are investing, just make sure there is going to be a market of tenants, because if you've got a property without a tenant sitting there for a long time, that's when it can get hairy.
Let's talk taxes though, because the tax treatment on an investment property is quite different to the family home.
Yes, it is. Family home is the number one asset for people to hold to avoid tax, because it's free of capital gains tax. Okay. For every other investment that we hold, whether that's shares or an investment property, you pay tax on the capital gain, which is the profit on the sale when you sell the property.
Okay, so I bought my property, $1 million.
Yes.
Market's gone okay.
Yes.
Selling the property for 1.3, so it's a $300,000 gain.
Yes.
What happens to me?
Well, you've made a $300,000 profit. Australia tax rules have a 50% capital gains tax discount. So if you hold the property for over 12 months, then that $300,000 gain becomes a $150,000 gain. That gets added to your taxable income. If you've bought it with a partner, as part of a couple, then that $150,000 becomes a sort of $75,000 gain per person.
Okay, and can you shift that gain around? Can someone have 100? Someone can take 50, depending on your income rates are, or
generally no. It depends on how you've structured the ownership.
Okay.
But for the most common would be it's just 50-50. That's the way most people own investment properties.
So what do smart investors do? How do you structure this? So you've built up a portfolio. You want to make some profits.
Yes. The
market's treated you well, but how do you make sure you maximise your profit?
A couple of things. And professional advice from an accountant is important here, because there is a lot of timing involved in it. There are some strategy that you can do to reduce your tax as well. Number one, if you've got a big capital gain, it's good to hold on to that where possible until a year where you don't have a lot of other income, whether that's retiring, whether that's taking a year off work, because then that capital gain becomes your taxable income for the year, rather than being slapped on top of whatever your wage is for the year.
Could you structure things? I'm just thinking, just out loud really. If there's a year where someone in your household, maybe they're on paternity leave that year and the income is coming off a cliff, could that be a point in time where you look, actually maybe this is the time to sell the investment property?
So it's all about your income. It's all about what your taxable income is. And another strategy that's becoming increasingly common, we had some superannuation rule changes a few years back now, and you can actually easily make tax deductible contributions into super. We've got something called carry forward catch-up contributions, where if you haven't used your, now it's $30,000, but it was a little bit lower previously, your $30,000 contributions cap each year for tax deductible super contributions, you can carry forward those unused portions, which means that someone who hasn't paid much into super in the last 5 years can potentially put $100,000 in 1 year into super, get a tax deduction for that.
So the threshold's 30,000. So I think, but you can, if you haven't done that for 1 year, you can carry that 30,000 across to the next year and again.
Yes, so and it started about 25 and it's gone up to 27, but it's 30 at the moment. So
if you sell your investment property and you've made your $150,000 profit and you've made no contributions to your superannuation account for the past 5 years or so, you can actually then go and put that profit into your superannuation account and get
that's a strategy that a lot of pre-retirees are doing, or new retirees are doing. They're looking at, and this is where advice becomes really important. They're getting that tax advice. They're speaking to financial planners and accountants just to figure it out.
And they're getting good advice, but it also means that the window to accessing that funds is shorter. If you're earlier in your journey, it might be different.
You might not want to take your profit and pump it into super in your 30s, and you can't touch your super until your 60s. So yes, that's right. One
final one for you. Is there something, when you look back on your property investing journey, if you could do it again, would you do anything differently?
I think when I had children, I maybe went a little bit too conservative, but I'm comfortable with that, and slowed down the investment growth. But over time, and Look, the property market moves in cycles. We'll have boom periods, we'll have slow or negative periods. You only need to, my number one thing is you only need to ride out one boom with an investment property in your own home, and then you're set, you're on your way.
Okay, the next boom's around the corner.
Well, we've just had the next boom in some places. Sorry, we've just had a boom, but yeah, some cities, you don't know. So it's long term, it's patience, it's understanding the rules, it's playing by the rules, and it's just going along for the ride.
All right, there you have it. How do we invest in property?